Raul Castro's grandson, Raul Guillermo Rodríguez, also known as Raulito or the Crab, speaking out in his first interview with an American news outlet, telling USA Today he's open to speaking with President Trump. That coming as the island's energy grid has entirely collapsed yet again for the third time just this year in scorching 90-plus degree heat. Images show people setting up solar panels on the streets to charge their phones and electronics. Joining us now here on Top Story is Romina Ruiz-Goiriena. She's the executive editor for investigations and storytelling at USA Today. She's part of the team that interviewed Rodríguez Castro in Havana. Romina, thank you so much for joining Top Story tonight. Break down for us and for our viewers who exactly Raulito is and why he's so powerful in Cuba.
So thank you so much for having me here. Basically, the most important thing to know is that he is the nieto preferido. He is the favorite grandson of the former Cuban leader, Raul Castro. He was the head of his security, but as a result, he was and has been in his shadow through the mandate that Raul Castro had for almost a decade and continues to be his right-hand man. And even though there is a president in Cuba, Miguel Diaz-Canel, there is a lot of, as he said himself, of respect for the elders, and he's very much the voice of his grandfather.
Yeah. I want to read something to our viewers that stood out to me. I don't think it was a mistake that you put it this high up in the story. This is from your report. Quote, at the height of their power, Rodríguez Castro's grandfather and great-uncle Fidel were rarely seen without their olive green military uniforms. Rodríguez Castro wore light blue skinny jeans, a tight black Hugo Boss T-shirt, and Hermes sneakers. He also had a Ferragamo bag, you guys noted at one point. He also wore a Dolce & Gabbana shirt and more designer sneakers. He may be the grandson of the revolution, but some Cubans right now can't even eat. The average Cuban makes $16 to $20 a month. You know this. How can he be viewed as a serious leader in Cuba when he's living such a lavish lifestyle and everyone around him is starving?
Well, I think that, yes, he did tell me that he didn't purchase any of these clothes, that they were all gifts. But I think it would also surprise a lot of the viewers to know that there's also a lot of money in Cuba that flows in from remittances and flows in from basically Cuban exiles that are bankrolling their families, and actually a lifeline for their families, both for food, goods, internet, things that are absolutely out of the reach of a Cuban that does not have any family.
Right, but it's not Hermes sneakers and Dolce & Gabbana T-shirts. I mean, my family sends money to our family in Cuba, and I know it's not going to buy designer clothes. Essentially, my question is, how can he be respected by the Cuban people if he's living like this? And I mean, in your story, you show that people were hugging him and he seemed to be very popular. Or do people in Cuba, do the Cubans not care about this? I just think that if you have no power and you have no food and this leader is running around with gold chains and Hermes sneakers, I just wonder if that weighs politically. It's not a great look, if you will.
I agree with you. I think actually what is very interesting, though, is that he embodies what Cubans aspire and what they want, right? So he's not in military fatigues. He's not dressed how the traditional revolutionaries were. He's dressed in this aesthetic that would be no different than, say, Hialeah or parts of Westchester in Miami-Dade County. But it's actually what Cubans on the ground aspire to have. They aspire to have this access to this wealth.
I have a two-part question for you now. So who is in charge in Cuba, right? Is it Miguel Diaz-Canel, who is the current head of state, or is it Raulito, who is sort of a proxy leader for Raul Castro? And I ask that because why would he grant this interview to USA Today now? We've seen sort of several leaders grant interviews, including to NBC News. Diaz-Canel sat down with Kristen Welker here at NBC News. But why do you think Raulito wanted to sit down with USA Today? Do you think he's setting himself up to be the next leader of Cuba, or at least the go-between Cuba and the United States?
I mean, this question came up multiple times during our conversation, right? And he assured me that absolutely he works in tandem with Diaz-Canel, that they work absolutely in lockstep, that he is really a proxy, that he was actually chosen by his grandfather and with Diaz-Canel in order to spearhead these negotiations in the same way that President Trump has said that Marco Rubio is the one who is in charge of the Cuba issue. So he tried to mirror this time and time again, that there's no difference here. He said to us that he had no political aspirations. And actually, this story is an accumulation of many interviews that the team had with people who have had personal dealings. And all of them said the same thing, that they didn't see him as someone who was actually like gunning for power. But to us, he did say that, and this was his caveat time and time again, that if the revolution needed him, that he would step up, but only if the revolution needed him.
And that leads to my last question here. Do you think he's trying to set himself up to be the next leader of Cuba, to just stay in Cuba if there is a transition, or just to make sure he doesn't end up like Nicolás Maduro behind bars in a federal prison here in the United States?
I think the real question we should be asking ourselves is, if the U.S. government has sanctioned so many members of the Castro family, why is it that he has not been sanctioned himself? And I think, as the reporting bears out, we still don't know if he will or won't, and that's what we'll have to see.
It's a great point, and I invite everyone to read your story in USA Today. The other point, the counterpoint, of course, is that the Trump administration has been very clear that they don't want a Castro to lead Cuba, but we shall see what happens. We thank you so much for coming on tonight. Again, very big exclusive you and your newspaper got. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.